ustedes, Jack Woodcock. ¿Dónde estás? Jack. Oh, it's here. Thank you very much. Here's your command.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hello. Sorry, another presentation in English. I apologize. I'll do my best to make sure it's as interesting as possible. I was really excited to be asked to come and talk to you guys today about some of the work we're doing in the UK. Branded content is a massive part of our business, and it's a really important part of our future. So excited to come and talk to you about some of the stuff that we're doing. For those that don't know Time Out, it all started in 1968 in London. And I guess London was a really exciting place at that time. There was a big growth of youth popular culture with, like in every part of culture was developing, so whether it was food or theatre or art or dance. And that was the environment that Time Out was born. So it was constructed or conceived to help people discover the exciting new cultures that were starting up all over the city. Initially, it was a 4-page magazine, and although the products that we create have changed, and the haircuts in the office have also changed, and we don't really smoke or drink at our desks anymore, actually, what we do is pretty much the same today as it was back then, except on a much bigger scale. So Time Out is now in 108 cities in 39 countries, and we publish products in 13 different languages. And I think for probably the context of what we're here to talk about today, I think one of the things that's really that's quite important about our platforms and about how they work with branded content is that almost all of the products that we make are free for our audience. And I guess the relevance of that to branded content is that we have a relationship with our audience where they understand that the products that we give them are free, and the deal is that we work with brands to, at best, surprise and delight them with some of the cool stuff that I'm going to talk about today. And so when I first talked about, we're talking to the guys from BCMA about what I might talk about today, they said, come and talk to us about some cool stuff to do your transmedia storytelling. And so I was like, okay, well maybe we could talk about the stuff we did with Red Bull, where we challenged our readers, that's Stephen there, to enter a Time Out wagon into the Red Bull Soapbox Derby. Or maybe we could talk about some of the great live events that we're doing across the world now. This is an example of when we worked with a craft beer brand and reimagined a derelict rooftop space in East London and turned it into an amazing restaurant for one night. Or perhaps I could talk about some of the more stunt-type stuff we've done, like the time when we released animals into the city in London and challenged our audience to go out and find them for the chance to win a British Airways holiday. It was to promote a new route to South Africa, where I'm told penguins live. So we talked about that, and the guys at BCMA were like, yeah, that's really interesting, but that's not transmedia storytelling. And I was like, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. And so I thought it was probably useful to start organising our thoughts about the type of work that we'd like to talk to you about, with basically a bit of a definition of what we understand transmedia storytelling to be in its most basic form. It's a story where elements of a story are told across multiple channels to create a unified and coordinated entertainment experience. And this next bit is probably the most relevant to the work that we do. When done best, each medium makes its own unique contribution to an unfolding story. And I guess probably the unifying factor of the projects that I'm going to talk to you guys about today is that actually when, as a publisher, Time Out aren't an advertising agency or a consultancy, we make content for our audience. The brand stories that we tell are not our own. Essentially, the point in the process that we exist, some of you guys who work at agencies or on the brand side have formed a strategy and a narrative that you want to use to communicate your products and services to an audience. And that by that point that Time Out or any publisher is involved, that strategy is formed. And so the stories that we tell have to build on the great work that's done elsewhere in the industry. And so these are the three quite distinct products that we're going to talk about some of the work we've done for today. And I think when we were looking at the different things that that kind of tied these different projects together, they all kind of shared one commonality. I guess whenever you work on a partnership brief, working with, it could be Time Out, could be Vice, could be Facebook, a TV network, there are different players involved in the content that you create. On one half, you have a brand who have got something they want to talk to their audience about. Then outside of that, you have a partner. So in the case of our work, that's Time Out, and the sorts of things that we as a brand can credibly talk about. And then on the other side, you've got audience interest, like what the audience actually want to hear. I think the best branded content work are the examples where a team have been able to work together and find that meeting point that's answered all those questions. So what's a brand's objective, what's the partner's strength, and what are the audience actually interested in? And if you can find that space in the middle, I think that's the opportunity for the best branded content work to be made when working with a publisher. And so on to some of the stuff we've done. So this product here, which looks a bit odd, is, I've never seen it that big before, was a new product that was launched by Nestlé into the UK. So it's not a product that had ever existed before. Essentially, it is pre-filled coffee cups, which you keep you buy at a store, you keep them at home, and then you fill them up and take them out into the city and go about your life. So essentially, it's a convenience-led product. There's a little bit of background. It's a shocking fact, but British people are drinking less tea than they used to and are turning over to coffee. And so this product was launched to try and capitalize on some of that market growth. And although it's a convenience-led product, the work that was done on a strategy level by the agency, and they were thinking, okay, who's this relevant for? And they actually isolated this consumption moment, which was super early in the mornings, before coffee shops have even opened, and thought that a consumer, the sort of person that that they wanted to go and be excited about this product, could then take it out and go out into the city and explore. And I think one of the things that actually sort of unifies all of the stuff we're talking about today is that we were involved at the very earliest stage in the creative process. So on a strategy level, it was all that work was done, and they basically worked out that our audience was a good fit, and it meant that we got to see TV work and the narrative for the TVC before it had been shot. And that gave us lots of time to think about a really cool idea we could come up with. And this is the TV ad. So it's pretty cool, and I think being a brand, Time Out, who are very firmly rooted in a city, essentially that narrative is constructed in a city, so that was a good fit for us. And it felt like there was a big opportunity to take that brand story that had been created by Ogilvy and build a new chapter across Time Out platforms. And so I think. So the way that we always approach this type of brand content work, we took away this information and worked with our editorial team. And Caroline, the editor, was like, "That sounds really cool. There's something about that really early morning moment that creates a really exciting opportunity to go away and make content about stuff that our audience could do in the city." And then we took that idea to our social content team. And we're like, we want to work with Nescafe to promote this new product. Have you got any thoughts on this type of story? And they came back and said that whenever we, as a brand, post content involving sunrises, across Facebook and Instagram. Basically, Facebook and Instagram go crazy. Our audience love a picture of a sunrise. But we couldn't just take photos of sunrises. That wouldn't involve the product and didn't feel like exciting or new. And essentially, that's what that brand character has done in the TV ad. So we wouldn't have been building on top of that. So we thought, okay, so rather than taking photos of sunrises, what about if we told a story building on this story that had been created by Nestle, and went out and took video content of sunrises? That'd like be building, and we'd be able to like recast, if you like, that photographer in that TV ad as a cinematographer. And we're like, okay, well, we think we could expand and escalate that concept more. So rather than just taking video content of sunrises, what about if we worked with aerial cinematographers who were using drones and tried to take some sunrise footage like above the city? Because we know that our audience, back to that point of finding that middle point in the Venn diagram, we know that our audience are passionate about the city they live in and are always interested in finding like new perspectives on that place. And so then we took it to another level and thought, okay, rather than doing that, what about if we, over the course of a week, shot 10 sunrises from different points in the city and then told that story through various pieces of content. And that is what we did. So we worked with these guys to go out and get access to all sorts of amazing places in London. And every morning, for what felt like forever, but it was a very short space of time, would go out and try and capture a sunrise from a different part of the city. And by extending that narrative that was developed in that TV ad and pulling it into a real-world environment, we created a really interesting story that we were able to pull in lots of audience interest. So it looked great in print. In the week that this magazine article came out, the editorial team supported the project with a series of bits of content about exciting stuff that you could go out and do in the city early in the morning to really start building that moment of the day that we knew was so important to Nescafe. And the other added benefit is that through delivering that story, we ended up with a really beautiful piece of film that we were basically able to give back to our audience as a gift. I've never seen it on a screen that big before. That was pretty cool. And so yeah, this was one part of a bigger project where we told various different elements of these distinctly Nestle brand stories, which we constructed around this time of day that they wanted their brand to live. I think there's a few things that I think really stand out with that piece of work. And I think probably the thing that I think I'm most proud of what the team were able to deliver is that if you think about the TV ad that we saw at the beginning, it very much felt like that piece of film was from the same aesthetic universe as that TV ad. It was essentially taking a story that a brand had created through like a constructed like fiction and then bringing it into the real world in a way that we knew our audience would be interested in. I think, I mean, yeah, you can see the numbers, but that piece of film delivered more engagement on Facebook than any piece of film we'd ever published. And from a pure product level, so we ran research, as we always do on the bigger partnerships. And if you take, if you compare the people who had seen the content that we created for Nescafe to people that hadn't, awareness of this product, which was completely new, was more than double. So it looked really nice, but we know it did a good marketing job as well. The next piece of work that I'm just going to spin through is very different and, to be honest, pretty weird. So we had a brief from Turkish Airlines to work on some world-building activity around their sponsorship of Batman versus Superman. So Turkish Airlines had a brand deal with Warner Brothers and came to us to basically have a think about how we could extend that and make it more exciting. Just to give a bit of context, again, the same sort of theme as with that piece of work for Nestlé. We were involved at the earliest stage, and it meant that we got to see TV scripts and kind of really get an understanding of what they were looking to achieve with this bit of work.
As the airline that flies to more countries than any other, Turkish Airlines is pleased to announce a new destination, Gotham City. A city that's risen above its past to become a thriving urban center.
Thanks to a significant grant from my company, Wayne Enterprises, Gotham is being restored to its former glory.
From the legendary Gotham Opera House to the nightlife of the new Bowery, take a trip to a city that never stops. Discover why Gotham City is great again.
And so seeing the boards for that piece of work kind of started to make it make sense. So because Turkish Airlines fly to more places than anyone else, if Gotham and Metropolis were real places, then they'd fly there. And then if Gotham and Metropolis were real places that had all those types of things going on that you saw in those ads of like cultural activities, then it stands to reason that they would have a timeout. And so we took that idea away and started to play around with it. We're like, well, how can we help them build this world? Maybe it's through a magazine, but then that didn't feel quite right. Where would we distribute it? Because we can't know they're not real places. Or perhaps a website, but then it felt like to really help them build out this world, it needed to be a tangible product, something you could hold in your hands. And I think about book would work. And so that's what we did. So we worked with Turkish Airlines, DC Comics, Warner Brothers, and Time Out's editorial team to create a 128-page guidebook to two cities that do not exist, which was probably the oddest project I've ever worked on. But it was really, really exciting. And I guess the depth of content that we needed to be able to create something like this meant that... Still on? Still working? Good. We could go back into the DC archive and find things that we could reference. But actually, we had to make quite a lot of this stuff up. But in a way that it made sense for the universe that had been created through this film. And so we did it. We printed 100,000 copies, and they went on sale in the UK, the US, and Turkey in over 1,200 retail locations. We took the idea that Turkish Airlines and Warner Brothers had created and then brought it into the real world in a very distinctly time-out way. And it was really exciting. The next and final piece of work that I'm going to quickly spin through is still live, so there's no results. But I think it is a nice example of using a similar treatment with that piece of Nescafe work, how we took a brand story and then extended it into the real world on Time Out platforms. So this is a Lexus CT hybrid, and Lexus have a bit of a problem with this car in as much as the people that they need to buy it aren't buying it and don't quite understand how it would fit into their lives. I think probably the easiest way is to sort of talk through that issue is to run the TV ad. So the insight that the brand team at the AND partnership had is that urban millennials living their lives in the city are surrounded by amazing things they could do all the time, but they don't do them. We get locked into a routine and don't open our horizons to the amazing stuff that's on offer all around us. But if we say yes to those experiences, then our lives will be greatly enriched. And because this is a hybrid model, then out of Lexus's range, this is the perfect car to fit around that lifestyle. And it's all, so the narrative structure that they created, or the story, is around saying yes to the city. So we took that idea away and started working on it. I'm like, how can we bring this idea of saying yes to the city into the real world? And again, like as with Nescafe, in order to get cut through, we needed to expand and extend this idea. And so rather than saying yes to one city, we thought, well, what if we said yes to 4 cities through a challenge? So we took 2 people from the editorial team, put them in a Lexus CT hybrid, and went on a road trip. One day in Edinburgh, Manchester, Birmingham, and London. Every day they had to fit in as much stuff as they could, like the type of stuff that Time Out write about, into that day, taken around in this CT hybrid. Outside of the print content, we created like a big raft of video assets about the 2 people actually going around doing these things. And we know from our experience of how our digital audience operate that they're really interested in this type of content. This type of video that focuses in on a thing that they can then go and do, share with their friends, gets great cut through. But yeah, as I say, I'm over time and we've got no results to present on this because it's still live. Just one final thought. I know it was probably the most boring slide that I presented, but this really is, I think, the most important one. And goes outside of branded content and transmedia storytelling and all sort of partnership work that you as advertisers do with media brands. If you can work together in a truly collaborative way and find that point in the middle between what your objective is as a brand, what strength a partner can bring in the space they operate, and what the audience is actually interested in, if you can find that middle bit, then amazing things can happen and you can do fantastic work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.